video of Angela and get a little peek in her life.
Hi everybody, my name is Angela, and I'm so excited to represent my Vietnamese American community from Orlando, Florida. I'm an elementary school teacher and a content creator. My mission is to empower young people to get involved within their communities. This week, I'm taking you along with me to cook a delicious Vietnamese dinner for the Ronald McDonald House. Ronald McDonald House is more than just a charity. It's an organization that provides support for families who have loved ones that are experiencing treatment in a local hospital. Many of these families face burdens such as long travel hours, financial strain, lost jobs, worried siblings, and separation from loved ones. No family should have to go through this. Food is a love language of my family, and there's nothing that compares to a home-cooked meal that's been made with love. Ronald McDonald House is always looking for new volunteers and chefs. You don't have to be a 5-star chef to do this, so I'm personally inviting you to gather your friends and family to get involved. To learn more about the Ronald McDonald House in your city, be sure to check out rmhc.org. Remember, in times of darkness, love is the key.
Awesome.
All right. Please join me in welcoming Ms. Angela Van.
Angela, thank you again also for coming all the way from Florida.
Thank you for having me.
And our second princess, so wonderful, wonderful achievement there. Now, Angela, you talked about food a lot because that seems like you said that is your love language, right?
It is, yeah.
Okay, so let's see if we get this here. Slide. What exactly are we looking at here? This is something that you said you wanted me to make sure we show. What is this?
So, a little bit about me. I'm a 4th grade teacher, and I also have a really strong love language of food. And what started as a senior thesis eventually became my passion project, Scholar Bites. But it all started when I myself was a 4th grader, and I went through my years in school experiencing all of these school lunches. So I wanted to ask the audience if you also ate any of these school lunches growing up. Yeah, I remember there were some questionable things on here. Yeah, but I remember growing up, my parents were also immigrants, and my parents were really busy with work. But I couldn't afford school lunch, so my mom would pack me a school lunch. She would always pack me chicken and rice. But she would reuse the styrofoam boxes. This was the luxurious version of what I ate growing up because my mom didn't have time to chop the chicken. So she would just throw the turkey leg in there, and I would just have to go to school. Well, one day when I brought it to school, I was a new student, and I had everything in a little King Soopers bag. King Soopers was a grocery store that was back in Colorado. But I brought out my school lunch. I was sitting at the table with a lot of my friends, and all of a sudden I started getting comments and weird looks, and some of the students had asked me, "Oh, what does that smell? What are you bringing? Why are you eating that? Why aren't you eating the school lunch?" And for some reason, I started to feel a sense of shame, and I felt something trigger inside of me, and I realized something was wrong because I didn't finish the chicken and rice that day, and I had to throw the rest of my lunch away. So by the time I came back home, my mom was asking me if I finished my lunch. Of course I said yes, because in an Asian family, you don't waste food, right? So eventually, I started seeing the same problem come up because my younger sister, who was much, much younger than me, she also started going to school, who was also eating chicken and rice from home. But she had it better than I did. So my parents were able to afford school lunch programs, were a lot more efficient. And one day I was FaceTiming her because by that time we were living on different coasts. And I asked, my usual question at the table for the dinner is, "What did you eat at school today?" And this is her from when she was really, really little. But that day she decided to not eat lunch, and she said, "Oh, I didn't eat anything today." And so I asked her, "Oh, why didn't you eat anything? Aren't you hungry?" She said, "No, I waited till about 3 or 4 p.m. till I got home. I wanted to eat Mom's chicken and rice." And so it really dawned on me because I don't know about you, but when I go hours without eating, I'm not so nice to people. I'm not my best self, you know? And so eventually the problem continued, and when I became a teacher, I had a student in my class that came in one day, and she was really excited to start 5th grade, but she had told me that she was nervous about the lunches because at home she would eat food with her hands, and she told me, well, Miss Angela, I don't really think I should bring my school lunch to school because people are going to think I look weird since I eat with my hands. And that was when my passion project started. I started to do a lot of research on what was actually being served in the schools, because in the slides before, many of you noticed something that maybe you probably ate, maybe it didn't taste so good, and maybe it wasn't really good for you. But I noticed that it wasn't just my student who also had a problem with lunch shaming, but it was other students too that had different cultural foods and couldn't bring it to school because they didn't feel accepted. So I decided to watch a lot of documentaries on what kind of foods were being served in the US. And the United States is actually one of the only countries that has such a huge issue. And in other countries, we notice that many kids are super hands-on with the school lunches. They're either learning exactly what ingredients are being put into these foods, who is cooking them, they're actually serving themselves and each other, and the US doesn't do that. So that's why I started my project, but that's where I started.
So I want to touch base on that because that triggers a lot of memories for me. My good friend Cindy there was part of this, but Cindy was one of the popular kids, so she got to eat with all the cool kids. I sat on the curb and ate with maybe myself and maybe one or two other guys. My mom would always make me, out of love, one of the most smelly sandwiches I have ever had in my entire life. And every time I open it up, everyone just stopped talking. And I'm like, my bad. And I just basically walk outside and eat it. But there are times when I just threw it away because I just could not bear the shame and the ridicule back from Starkville High of just having to eat that and people looking at me like I was a freak. So those things, even back then, was very triggering for me. And I can imagine what it was like for you going through there. What were some of the things that you did to deal with lunch shaming as a child and going forward as a college and I guess a grad student from there?
I think something that helped me kind of launch the passion project was knowing that the power of food and nutrition can really help you in your day. And it doesn't matter what age you're at, but especially as young kids, you need fuel in order to go about your day, in order to do your best, and it really has a strong correlation to academics. And so I think finding my tribe of people who also felt the same way that I did, who felt really connected to my message, really helped me understand that I needed to do my research first and really figure out what kind of solutions can I do right now, something that's really small, because a problem like this isn't going to be solved overnight. It's definitely a systemic issue. And what I found was that a lot of the budgeting and funding that's going to school nutrition is, while we do have more access to food now, so there's breakfast programs, maybe some of you have experienced the free school lunch program, but what's actually being served in those lunches is the root of the problem. Because I think that when you're making a lot of food for a lot of people, a lot of schools, the nutritional value continues to go down. And so I think starting with where you are at right now in your neighborhood, in your tribe of people, that's where the biggest difference starts. And hopefully, generations to come, it'll continue to multiply.
We did a little talk about this. Was the United States always like this in terms of how it treats children, which I think is one of the saddest things on a global scale on how it treats kids' nutrition in school? Was the United States always like this, or is this something that's a relatively new development in our system?
I think that there was a really cool video on YouTube that I watched a couple of weeks back, but it showed the evolution of the school lunches over time. And as time progressed, we have more efficient machines now, more factories that are developed, technology that can make tomatoes taste like ketchup, but it doesn't really have tomatoes in it, and a lot of the artificial flavoring that makes Sprite tastes so good and I can never put it back down. It's stuff that I think becomes a bigger issue because we're cheating ourselves of organic foods and the process of actually making a nice home-cooked meal that's healthy. And I always think back to my family's cooking because, you know, something as simple as bún can take days to eat, right? Something as simple as a salad, it's not just lettuce, it's something that's grown. You have to wait, there's a process behind it. So I think it's been an ongoing issue for a very long time.
So we have this really, I would say, systemic problem where the quality of food on a national level is going down pretty much almost every year, and yet when there are homes that can feed their kids, and it's not the type of food that people are used to, and usually the immigrants that do that because they want to feed their kids their home food, they get shamed on top of that. So not only are they not being fed well, they're also being shamed when they could be fed well. What do you think we could, what are things that you think we can do about that now?
I think I'm going to go back to the story with my student because I think having an open conversation with your kids at home about the food that they're eating and sharing different ways to be curious. That same day that student came into my classroom and expressed to me that she was scared of showing her culture, I responded to her and I said, you know, sometimes people have an interesting way of responding to you when something is different from what they're used to seeing. So I think language is everything. The way you speak to people, the way you ask questions, the way your tone is. I think communication is such an important tool and skill to have in every aspect of your life, and it starts really young. So if we can teach our kids to be curious and kind at the same time, I think that will really take a long way.
Now you also, you're not just preaching this, you're also doing something about it too. Can you tell us a bit about the program you finally started?
Yes. So Scholar Bites is right here, but it basically started as a community cooking class. I worked with students from UCF, the Vietnamese American Student Association, and I had a group of volunteers come to my house, and we learned how to cook Vietnamese street food. And I involuntarily also forced my family and friends to join me too after the holiday season. So Ronald McDonald House is an organization that's been super close to my heart since high school. And so I decided to take a group, and normally many of these hospitals eat the same foods. So they'll eat tacos and hamburgers, but I haven't seen anybody put Asian food on their menu yet. So that's why I decided to create Scholar Bites. But the why behind Scholar Bites came from knowing that there was such a problem that is still being experienced today by a lot of kids. So I wanted to share awareness about promoting nutrition in public schools specifically because they are the ones that don't have enough funding for nutritious school lunches. And we're also working alongside community gardens that are being built next to schools so that the fresh produce can be used in those cafeterias. So that's a picture of one of the gardens that we're currently working on now. Cindy and I went pulling the weeds in there, so that was really fun. But yeah, that's what we're doing now.
What's your vision for Scholar Bites in terms of its growth and potential impact and scale?
A dream of mine would be able to take it to the federal state and eventually have a policy where the guidelines that are mandating what nutritional school lunches are being served, making sure that kids have access, especially in public schools, not just students, but faculty members too, because we, just as much as our students need fuel, I think our teachers also need fuel too throughout their day.
That's an interesting question. We talk about students. Are teachers and faculty being fed well?
So this is first-hand experience because I've worked with a lot of really great, amazing teachers, and I worked with a team that lived on 3 cups of coffee a day, and that was it. Maybe we'll squeeze in a snack here and there with our students, but most of the time, my colleagues wouldn't eat at all until they would wait until after the school day, and I'm not sure how they did it, but I can't do that. So I was always snacking and trying to have lunch, and so I think our teachers should also be taken care of too.
in your professional opinion, what happens if we keep on down this road where we're in a culture where we're too busy to eat, and if we do eat, the food is subpar? What do you think that's going to do for our future generations? This is continuing to be the way we practice it and how we live.
I think if we continue going down this path, eventually more eating disorders are going to come up. I think your relationship with food is no longer going to be a joy as much as it should be, because food is something that connects so many people. Everyone has different home recipes. So without the education and the awareness of what it is that we're putting into our bodies, then I don't think we'll be able to have more healthy students to be able to go out into the work field.
What is a good way that you'd like to use food and culture together as a language?
I would love to continue to teach as much as I know from my family, but also be a student as well and learn about other cultures and always asking questions. I think that's one of the most powerful things that you can do.
So between here and, you work in Florida mostly, but you also, you were also, I won't call you native, but you also lived out in California for a while too, right? Is there a difference in the way food is perceived on both sides of the coast in terms of how accepted and culturally relevant it is?
So to give you some context, I really loved California. I love the Bay Area so much, and I will forever claim it as home. That was one of my fears I had before moving to Florida, because it was on the opposite coast, and I was thinking, oh my gosh, I'm not ready to let go of all the good food here. What am I going to do? But when I moved to Orlando, I got situated, and that was when I met Cindy. She introduced me to a lot of different restaurants. So to be honest, it's growing so much. And I'm really excited to see the growth that Florida has. I'm not sure if it'll reach California's yet, but I have high hopes now that I'm there. So,
What do we have, or what do you have in plan for yourself in the next 3 to 5 years? Where can we see Angela and I?
so in the next month, I'm actually hosting my very first Kids Edition community cooking class at Celebrate Lunar. It's going to be a really big food festival that's in Orlando, and we just got sponsored by Vera Asian Kitchen. It's a restaurant that's owned by a woman named Kathy Nguyen. And we'll be hopefully beginning our community sessions monthly, where I'll get to be able to cook in their kitchen and have kids come in with their families and learn how to cook. So hopefully I'll have my community classes going, and I'm also an aspiring grad student. I'm getting ready to apply right now to get a master's in speech pathology. So that's where I'm at, yeah.
What are you going to do with speech pathology? What you want to do?
So working in the classroom for the last couple of years, I really loved everything about it, but I wanted to go deeper with speech pathology, because I think, once again, communication and language is super important. And it would be a really awesome way to still work with kids in education, but not directly in the classroom. So I want to broaden my horizons. That's why I chose speech pathology.
Well, Angela, thank you for coming all the way from Florida. Thank you for your impact and mission and helping us feed our next generation.
Thank you.